I locked in with my wife for 12 months and it started the journey towards us making over $30 million through Airbnb. 12 months. That's how long my wife Steph and I gave ourselves to make this Airbnb business work. I'm James Murphy, and today I've launched over 500 short-term rentals over the past 6 years across 4 continents. During this time, my Airbnb business has generated more than $25 million in bookings, and over the past few years, we've hosted hundreds of thousands of guests. But back then, we started from scratch and made the decision to go all in. 12 months of total commitment, and that single decision became a ripple that touched way more people than we ever expected. This video is a story of how we went from struggling to entrepreneurs building a $25 million Airbnb empire. But not just the pretty Instagram version, but the real version. The one filled with late nights, breakdowns, and painful lessons that cost us thousands. I will show you what we learned so you don't have to go through the same. The breaking point that led us to make $30 million. I was working as a pastor in a church in the UK and life wasn't bad at all. I loved putting myself to the service of God and the community, and I really enjoyed touching dozens of lives in such an impactful way back then. I really have some powerful memories that I will be grateful for forever. The only thing that worried me was that even though the church was growing rapidly, personal financial pressures were also increasing. The costs involved with raising 2 children and rent and day-to-day life and all of the bills, it was pretty much more than we earned every single month. As I was sipping coffee one day, it hit me. What if something bad happens to me? What if we have an emergency and we need extra funds? We weren't really prepared for that, and so we were in a precarious scenario financially. It wasn't long before life tested us with exactly the kind of situation I had feared. In about March of 2019, our son Hunter came home from school with unexplained bruises. We received no phone call from a teacher, no instant report, no explanation of what had happened. We were shocked at the lack of communication, the lack of details, and we knew in that moment we immediately had to draw him out of that school. It was about halfway through the term, other schools in the area were already full, and so the only option we had was to place him into a private school. The big issue was we couldn't afford the private school fees. This would be more by far than we earned every single month. This commitment was going to quickly drain our savings and leave us in a position where we'd barely be able to put food on the table. As Steph and I discussed this, we felt a deep conviction that we needed to put him into the school where we knew he'd be safe. The problem was we were going to have to figure out how to make more money very quickly. Our backs were against the wall, and so from that moment on, it was game on. We had to get very creative and think outside the box. A flood of ideas to make extra money ran through my mind, things that I'd maybe seen on the internet, conversation that I'd had with friends, but all of them seemed to have a flaw. I even considered going back to flipping cars, but for me it just felt like a backward step and it wasn't going to create a sustainable income or cash flow, which is what we really needed. No one was coming to rescue us from this situation. No one was coming to save us. It was really on us to make a change. And if we wanted a different life, we knew we had to build it ourselves. That's when a friend of ours, Maciek, told us about the Airbnb arbitrage model. In the UK, it's often called rent-to-rent service accommodation. This is where you can legally sublet properties and turn them into profitable rental units by putting them online on Airbnb and Booking.com, and the money that you make from the total revenue can pay the rent and pay the costs, and you're left with a profit margin. For us, it felt like a God-sent idea. Steph and I sometimes talk about that moment when we were listening to him speak, and the more he talked, the more we realized this was it. To be able to control a property and make money from the property without even having to own it was a game-changing idea for us. It was so much more scalable than having to save up huge deposits to buy a property. It also solved the problem of cash flow. The money that we'd make would be coming in every single month consistently. The next morning, we jumped into research mode and read everything about Airbnb until our eyes blurred and our minds ached. After endless hours of research and doubt, we could see the opportunity clearly, almost as if this business itself was staring back at us. In our minds, this had gone from theory into the certain way forward. We were only waiting for our courage to match the readiness of the opportunity. And that's just it. Honestly, we didn't feel ready, but we did feel called to take a step and make a change. And that's when we decided to simply go all in. We only had about $7,000, about £5,000 left in savings, and we spent most of it initially on a coaching program to understand Airbnb and the fundamentals fast. What we knew for certain is we wanted to get it right first time because we could not afford to mess it up. This put us in a position where we could learn fast and start immediately. Of course, it felt risky to make this financial commitment for this coaching, training, and mentoring, but it was one of the most sensible investments we could have made. After all, it was an investment in ourselves, our skills, our future. And we also went to the bank and signed off on about a $15,000 loan, betting on ourselves completely. This is the money that we would use to launch our first property whilst also supporting our 2 kids and funding our son's new private school. During that first month of locking in together, the pressure we felt is hard to put into words. But it crept into dinner conversations, sat with us in silence at night, and made us question if we were being bold or just simply reckless. But underneath all of that fear, there was something louder, a fire, a quiet, unshakable certainty that we were done playing small. And in the beginning, it wasn't pretty. We got rejected by 40 landlords, and every no chipped away at our confidence. But we kept knocking. We did not give up, and that is what commitment looks like. After 40 no's, we finally cracked it. We got our first yes, and that one yes changed our lives forever. It actually became a yes for 2 properties, as there were 2 apartments available in the same building. Let me tell you, these 2 properties weren't what we had in our mind when we first dreamed about starting this Airbnb business. They were small 1-bedroom apartments in a not so hot part of town in Sheffield called Hillsborough, not far from the famous football stadium. Still, it was ours, and that meant something, and we were gonna make it a win. And immediately after getting the keys, we went straight into it, literally. We scrubbed every corner with our own hands, took all the photos ourselves, hoping they'd capture the love we poured into the space. Steph even folded the towels in a 5-star swirl pattern she saw on YouTube just to make sure guests feel extra cared for. After spending hundreds of hours and investing all of our savings and some of the personal loan that we'd taken out, the end of the month came. And when we checked the numbers, even though we had spent 2 weeks on setup and lost the chance to be booked for about half of the month, we realized that the properties grossed just enough to pay for themselves, and one of them even turned a small profit. We could have been discouraged by that, but something amazing happened. It fired us up even more. We'd been learning the whole time, and that first month was full of mistakes, and I mean lots of mistakes, but we still broke even. This proved to us that this Airbnb thing actually worked. And if it worked, even with all the blunders, we could make it work again and better. This was the start of our journey, not the end. We could take this from level to level to level. So our takeaway from the first month was the following: success demands sacrifice, but when you push yourself, you uncover what's really possible. That initial acquisition was proof that our vision could become a reality. And that's when we decided to go hard and lock in. Locking in 12 months. We gave ourselves 12 months. 12 months to figure it out or shut it down. We knew words alone wouldn't cut it. It was time to roll up our sleeves and really get to work. We made the tough call to eliminate all distractions: friends, yoga, movies, Instagram doom scrolling, and even regularly sacrificing a good night's sleep. Every minute suddenly had a price tag attached, and if any activity didn't move our business forward, it was gone. Every day, we followed the same relentless routine. Up before the sun came up, kids off to school, then lock ourselves away. Most days we'd work 12, 14, sometimes even 16 hours straight. I couldn't afford to leave my church job yet, so Steph carried us hard in the beginning. I helped wherever I could, taking 15-minute breaks here and there during a long work day to answer guests or make inquiries on new properties. And after work, I'd grab the kids from school and jump straight into managing our unit. This wasn't just a tough few weeks, this became our life for months. I barely spoke to my friends, barely spoke to our families, and normal everyday life started to feel like some distant memory. Our focus narrowed down to only one thing and one thing only: making this business a reality for us and changing our lives forever. No weekends, no days off, just hustling on repeat. If you really want to change your circumstances enough then you will find a way to make it happen. By the end of month 2, we went in for another property in Cambridge. We started using spreadsheets to forecast growth and modeled out a year of cash flow on napkins. And that's where the real challenge began. The real challenges of locking yourself in. Everyone loves to talk about glory and success, but no one likes to talk about the struggle that comes before it. After all the hard work we put into the first 2 properties, we were exhausted. And it was mainly because we barely broke even. Even though we knew that this would work eventually, it took its toll on us. Steph was overwhelmed with making the business happen and taking care of the kids, and I was feeling the pinch of long hours and supporting the business. Every dollar we made went back into the business, rent, furniture, cleaning expenses, and for a short period of time, it felt like we were stuck in this endless loop, running just to stay in place. We spent nights running supplies across town and mornings managing guests from a laptop in the car. At times we weren't even sleeping enough, barely eating right, and we were constantly putting out fires. There were moments where we genuinely questioned if it was all worth it. We realized we needed a team and we needed processes, so the business stopped relying on us. I was doing my best to learn everything I could with the help of my coaching program, and I started to build a power team of local contractors. Our housekeeping team, handymen, electrician and plumbers, locksmiths, and we even hired a guest manager virtual assistant part-time. And slowly but surely, the units we had at that time started to run by themselves with little effort on our end. What went from dozens of hours a week of effort was reduced down to 5 to 10 hours of oversight and management. This was the proof we needed. Proof that our model worked, that it was robust, and it didn't require us to be in the weeds constantly, that it was scalable, that we could grow it and still have a life, make more money with less effort. That's when it hit us with absolute clarity. We were ready. Ready to move beyond surviving and start multiplying. That's when we knew it was time to scale. We pulled the trigger on our 4th to 7th listing, 4 properties in one go, almost immediately. This time it felt different. We had proof of concept, we knew the steps, and we had momentum. We got creative and started to leverage other people's money. Business loans, credit cards, furniture leases, joint ventures. This wasn't blind debt, as we were making far more monthly profit from the properties than the cost of the debt. It was good debt that was building a cash flow business, an asset for us and our family. We scaled and added dozens of properties over the following 6 months. But before we could even begin to celebrate all that we had achieved and that we were now generating tens of thousands a month, the awful news came knocking at our doors. The COVID pandemic hit worldwide in 2020. For a short period, cancellations were rolling in. The worst part, we couldn't fight it, as there was nothing people could do, and we understood that. Safety came first. And that meant our bookings dropped to close to 0. That was the moment we nearly pulled the plug. I remember seeing the spreadsheet open with red numbers across the board, showing us that we were just 2 months from being totally out of cash. 0. But quitting, it never crossed our minds. We would have gone through all of that pain for nothing. It wasn't even an option for us. And I remember sitting in a car with Steph while rain battered the windshield. She broke the silence and said, "What if we're closer than we think? What if this isn't the end? What if it's just one more test to see how bad we really want it?" Something in her voice sliced through my burnout, and something happened to me. That little fire inside, that one that we'd nearly lost, started to burn again. We called every landlord we had to deal with, restructured deals so they could stay afloat during the downturn, lowered our rates, and made a deal to delay payments when there were fewer guests. We turned long-term stays into a survival strategy. We started focusing on stability over dynamic nightly rates. We called building firms and contractors that were still traveling to keep building projects going and offered them accommodation. We offered isolation units to hospitals and advertised our properties as havens for key workers. Believe it or not, across almost 100 properties, we maintained a 70% occupancy throughout all of the lockdown periods. During this critical transition, Steph took over operations, handling everything from growing our operational team, building interior design plans, project managing new property launches, and ensuring our cleaning teams delivered 5-star reviews at all times. I started focusing on marketing and scaling partnerships with new landlords, and we started tracking our numbers and focusing more on turning this into a healthy business that could continue to grow. We reviewed every guest message and fine-tuned responses to reduce problems before they started. We became proactive instead of reactive. Before we even realized it, we were able to pay Stephanie £5,000 per month. That was double what I had ever earned. Then paying me became comfortable too. We reinvested most of our profits for growth, but were still able to draw a 6-figure combined salary. For some, this is ordinary and definitely not life-changing money. But for us, it was mind-blowing. And it was proof that even with everything against us, the Airbnb arbitrage model worked. But success came with an unexpected cost I hadn't accounted for in our spreadsheets. The $30 million breakthrough, our transformation. You see, this journey taught us something profound. At first, success is tied to money, but it really is about what you become in the process of making it. I remember sitting with my daughter Phoenix one evening and I realized I had missed so many core memories whilst working far too hard during her early years. She looked at me and said, "Dad, will you be coming to my school play on Friday?" That hit me harder than 100 sleepless nights because I realized this was something she desperately craved. For her dad to be present in our most important moments, that was all that she wanted. Every hour I poured into the business was an hour I wasn't spending with the very people I was doing it for. I was building a better future, but I did not want to risk not being present with my kids at the same time. And then I saw it clearly. I wasn't just growing a business. I was showing my kids what it looks like to commit, to persevere, to build something that matters. I could do both. I was in control. I was my own boss and I had the ability to make the decision that was best for my family. The vast majority of people do not have that blessing, but it can be in our power to make it a reality. It was about legacy, and not just the kind you leave behind, but the kind you live in front of them every single day. It was about showing our kids what's possible when you refuse to give up, that you can work hard and be present in the most pivotal moments of their life. I started to build my diary around taking my kids to school and ensuring I could tuck them into bed. I was there when they woke up and when they closed their eyes at the end of the day. I still worked hard, but on my terms. Yes, we scaled to 500 properties. Yes, we hit $30 million in collected booking revenue, but the real victory goes beyond those numbers. It's the lives we've changed. There are already hundreds of others who have followed us on this same path. Looking back at those first 12 months, I realize now that the struggle wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Every no built our resilience. Every late night solving problems taught us about how to be a fearless leader. And every moment of doubt was an opportunity to strengthen our faith in ourselves and in God. Here's what I want you to understand. Your 12 months of locking in might look different than ours, and your journey might take different turns, but the principles remain the same for all of us as humans. Commitment isn't about having it all figured out. It's about showing up when you don't. Success isn't about avoiding failure. It's about failing forward. And leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about being willing to find them as you travel the unbeaten path. So let me ask you, what could you build in 12 months if you went all in? What dreams could you turn into reality if you refused to quit and you gave it your all? The clock is ticking. Now you know that the path to building your legacy starts with a single choice. And if you're committed to showing your kids or your loved ones or your family or your friends what is possible when you refuse to give up, even when it means making short-term sacrifices, click on this video next. It's a transformative program that builds both your business and the future your family deserves. I'll see you inside.